I have a couple of questions. First of all, you've answered one, so that's good.
Yep.
And we should, once we go into facility, just look at our needs. That being said, thank you for making the statement that we have about 3.4 billion in need out there, 1.8 billion in critical needs. So clearly, we're not funding all the critical needs given the budget that we have. So there's still a lot more to fund. The transparency of the process of which ones get funded and not needs to continue. So I applaud the process there was taken to date. And also, as we look at those, ensuring, I'll cite one example that we heard from today, right? So the speakers that we have from Kellogg School did an excellent job of putting together a PowerPoint, all of pictures depicting the needs. And I can't gauge what, how many of those are critical versus not. But there are probably 400 other schools in similar situations, right? So I also want to make sure that we don't overreact and ensure that we do take a step back in equity and look at all schools equally, right, across all districts, because they're not all here giving us their presentations with pictures. So that part of the process needs to continue, focusing clearly on the critical needs. Do we have a sense, given that we heard on another issue related to capital needs is ADA access, right? Do we have a sense of, similar to how you sized the 3.4 billion in deferred needs, if money wasn't an issue, what would it take to make all floors accessible?
Sure. So ultimately our assessments have to ensure first floor accessibility to every school around $80 million, and to make every school ADA accessible from top to bottom around $600 million. Once again, it's important to note that of the 263 in facility needs that we're going to do, as well as some of the programmatic investments, those areas will allow us to chip away at that ADA accessibility. And that's why, even though we have a 5-year goal to ensure minimum accessibility, meaning at minimal hitting that $80 million target, we feel both with the opportunities that we have in other capital areas, but also with a 5-year capital plan. And as investments like the pre-K, projects, go by the course, we will have the ability to invest more in deferred maintenance and ADA accessibility over the next few years.
And how many of our schools are already fully ADA accessible? Do we have
we can get that answer, but yes.
Can I just ask a related question on the ADA, because this came up today, but also at the Capitol hearings last week. I can imagine there could be different ways to approach it. So one is making the first floor accessible. Another could be making a smaller number of schools fully accessible, or targeting investments based on where we have students with demonstrated need, or communities that have, I guess, a greater or lesser need. How was the decision made, or can you explain a bit about the logic of making the goal first floor accessibility?
So I think there's a couple of pieces to it. I think one, we need to start somewhere, just kind of like, level setting. I think two, while there's not only issues in regards to student accessibility, we want to make sure that parents, community members can have access to the school. And if you're at least assuring first floor accessibility, you can then make accommodations to have report card meetings, things of that nature. With that being said, I think it's important to note that we have not allocated that $10.5 million yet to projects. Okay. We want to work with stakeholders. I mean, Access Living is someone who's been deeply involved in CPS. They're an organization that, we read their report. They're an organization that we're going to reach out to as we kind of go through the strategy. We're going to work also very closely with the Mayor's Office for Peoples with Disabilities, Commissioner Tamley. But we have specifically not allocated that $10.5 million because we want to make sure we have the right stakeholders at the table to make those decisions.
Okay.